Welcome to the Chase and Embrace Show, where we interview women who are chasing God and embracing His purpose for her life, with the hopes to encourage you to do the thing that God is calling you to do. Hey everyone, welcome to the Chase and Embrace show today. And I just want to thank you for coming to the premiere. And we are just so thankful. And today is part 2 with Louise Wright with the Right Life Coaching. And I just want to first of all just say welcome to the show. It's so glad to have you back in such a short time frame, but it's a very important topic.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be here.
So we aired segment 1, episode 1, just this past June 1st. And unfortunately, sometimes things happen and we have a similar thing in common. And that is that we both lost a child. I lost a stepdaughter and you lost your daughter. And we aired this about on June 1st because that is would have been Mallory's 24th birthday. And so that's the reason why we chose to air it on that. And then we're airing the second episode, and you guys can go watch it. We'll link it in the description. But we're airing the second episode on the date the accident happened for your daughter. So it's a tough topic, and if you want to hear about what happened and everything, please go watch that. It's heart-wrenching, but super important, especially if you're dealing with someone that you've lost, especially a child. But today is a little bit more positive because we're going to talk about how you got through your daughter being killed and then what God is using that pain for purpose. And so today is a little bit more positive, and anybody out there, please stay tuned because Louise has some insight. It's been 10 years since your daughter was killed. For Mallory, it's only 2. So we're still going through, some of the grief and the loss, and not saying that you're not, because losing a child, you just are always grieving and losing, and that loss. But let's see and let's talk about how you got through that pain. And then, in places that I can identify or talk about Mallory, I will. And we'll go from there. So, Louise, how, after, she died and it took a while to process through all that pain. How did you? What were the steps? I know God had a big hand in that. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, like you said, it was hard. Mostly because I had to get back to work, and the job I did, I worked at a pregnancy resource center, and as a center director, and one of my main jobs was to counsel the women who came in to first of all verify that they were pregnant. Second of all, to possibly have an abortion. And the pregnancy center, though, was a faith-based pregnancy center. And of course, we do not do abortions. So it was up to me to then counsel with them. So counseling has kind of been in my repertoire, I guess you could say, for quite a while.
Right.
And so getting back to that kind of took my mind off of what I just had gone through, like literally just weeks before. And because now I'm focused on these girls who are hurting and lost and don't know what to do, and so forth. And then on top of that, one of the big things that I remembered other people telling me was that everyone grieves differently.
Yeah.
And that's what is so important, that we remember that your spouse, your children, whoever is not going to be grieving the same way you are. And I used to tell my husband during those 5 weeks that Rebecca lived, that if something does happen to her, if she passes away, I told him right out, we're different people. We're going to grieve in different ways. And we
Yes.
have to learn to accept that. And sure enough, within about a month and a half, 6 weeks after her loss, Steve would come home and he would say, I lost it in the car. I just lost it. As soon as I was done teaching, I got in the car and I just pounded my fists on the steering wheel and the tears came and I just cried. And then he looks at me and he goes, why don't you ever do that? And it's like, because I guess I'm grieving differently.
Mhm.
And he goes, "Well, don't you miss her?" And it's like, "Yes, of course I miss her. Aren't you hurting?" "Yes, I'm hurting." And then I'd have to remind him. I said, "Honey, remember, we both are grieving in totally different ways,
Mhm.
and we can't allow that to affect our relationship."
Yeah,
And
so one of the things that Jimmy did was he immediately built a memorial for her. And so we have a lot of trees on our property, and he made a bench out of one of the stumps that we have. And it's a two-seater. And then every year we add flowers and we add a angel into the garden. And so it's really beautiful right now. And but he worked through his pain. That was the way he built, the deck. And he, last year during the anniversary, it was more about the shop. And so he worked through, that's how he
Mhm.
dealt with his pain, is through hands on work. And so,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And I guess that's what I did. And
Hmm.
I knew my kids were hurting. I knew friends of hers were hurting. I knew her boyfriend was hurting. And I just, normally, I'm a crier. Normally, I cry at every commercial almost.
Hmm.
Um, and people used to make fun of me and all. And since her loss, I hardly cry anymore.
Hmm.
I don't know what happened, but
I
I
think the
went through
pain was
that.
just so deep.
Yes. Yes. It's like I went through the hardest thing a parent can go through. And it's like, okay, I can't why cry at a commercial? That's stupid, you know.
Yeah.
Um so anyhow, but yeah, it took us a little time to work through it. But you hear so many times of couples divorcing after the
Yes.
loss of a child.
Yes. As soon
That
as
breaks my heart.
I know, the loss of a child, Satan goes after the marriage and just breaks them apart. And I used to think Jimmy used to come and he would talk to me, and I used to feel like there was this pressure to say the right thing, but there is no words.
No.
And so I just said nothing and I listened. And I took a loss and grieving coaching class as well. And I found that sometimes all you need is somebody to sit there and listen to the memories and listen to their pain, and sit and let them cry on your shoulder. And so
Yeah.
you don't feel that pressure to talk, because sometimes, like in Job, his friends came and they were quiet for a while, but as soon as they talked, they were like, you must have did something wrong, and
Yeah.
it doesn't
Yeah.
help the situation at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, it's exactly. And it took us a while to get through, but we did. We
and
got
I'm
through.
so thankful for that you guys held on strong as much as you were being attacked. Your marriage was being attacked, because Satan is good at blame.
Yes, he is. Yeah. And Steve was blaming himself too, that, why didn't we drive her to the friend's house and drive her home and, back and forth. And I questioning. And I finally said to him, honey, God has a time for us to be born and a time for us to die. And whether you drove her home or not, God still knew she was going to die on July 9th, that 2015. That was going to be the day she died. And
Yeah.
You might have survived if the accident happened. You might have survived that accident, but we still would have lost her. Or maybe something else would have happened on the night.
Mhm.
But God
Yep.
had a plan. He had a date, and that was her time.
Yeah. Hard to accept that sometime because we don't understand
No,
God's sovereignty.
no, no, we
But
don't.
yeah, well, I'm just really thankful that you guys got through that tough, that blame of yourself and, you know, the questioning of each other and how you grieve because it's hard. It really,
Yes, it
really
is.
is hard.
Yeah, and for you guys too. I mean, that's good.
Yeah. Yes. And, she was my stepdaughter. It was his daughter. So I felt like I wanted to be more of that support role, even though I was grieving too. But I felt like I needed to support him more. And,
Mhm.
um, and so I did the best that I could with what knowledge that I had. I probably wasn't perfect, but I tried really hard, even to this day.
Yes,
June is a hard month. June
yes,
is a
it is.
very hard month because
It
it's her
is.
birthday. It's also the anniversary of her being killed by somebody on the 24th, and then it's also Father's Day. So June is a very, very hard month.
Yes, yeah, and for us too. I mean,
Yes.
that's the date of
Unfortunately,
June 5th, the day the accident occurred.
yeah, unfortunately we do have that in common. So you guys got through. I mean, you started working, and your husband, he did the way, he went through his process of grieving. And then, so here you are today. And how is God using that pain for purpose?
Well, yeah. Um, well, I wrote a book
Hmm.
and it was just edited, and now I have to kind of rewrite it after
Okay.
all the editing points.
Yes.
So I'm working on that. I want to tell the story. I feel like it needs to be out there. And it took 2 years, I think, for it to really finally hit me. Because I think I felt like I had to be strong for everybody else. And so it took about 2 years, like around 2017, 2018, I finally started accepting it. And, I'd have times of crying, um, and just letting it out finally. And then I just started feeling God's call to minister to others. Because I just I've been through a lot of grief in my life. My father died at only age 50. My uncle, who I was very close to, he was only about 45 when he died in a work accident. And that was about a year and a half before my dad. A cousin of mine, she died along with her daughter, who was about 5, I believe, at the time, in a car accident. Her and her husband and other daughter, they were all coming back from the beach, from vacation at the beach, and there was an accident, and they were both killed. And that was like the year after my uncle died and the year before my father died. So I had these
Few
three
years.
right away. And that was really hard. And my uncle's funeral, I was not able to go to because I was actually, the day of the funeral, I was in the hills of Kentucky doing that, basically on a missions VBS tour. We were doing VBS classes at churches in the hills of Kentucky,
Oh, wow.
where kids don't usually ever leave that area. And so we went in and we spent time with them and so forth. And that had already been planned for months. So I couldn't back out of it. So that day was really hard because I knew it was happening and I knew I wasn't there.
Right.
So that was hard. But I just, yeah, I just felt like I needed to do something. One of the things, too, besides working at the pregnancy center, was most of my life, actually, for some reason, and I still not quite sure why. I think it's God, of course, but
Right.
even when I go to grocery stores, and there's maybe a lineup. and be behind a woman or something, and, and she might just turn and kinda smile, and I'll smile, and I go, "So how are you doing today?" I just start a conversation, and, within minutes, we're talking away, and, by the time it's her time to get up there, I know all about her life already.
Mhm.
She just starts talking and I don't say anything. And I just listen and nod and smile. And she just starts sharing stuff with a total stranger.
Yeah.
And I might give a little thought of, well, you might want to try this or, think about that or,
Mhm.
what. And it got to where my husband would just laugh. And he was, we'd go into store and he goes, "So who do you think you're going to meet today? Who are you going to counsel?" And it was just, or if there was a child in the card, I would always, I love children. So
Mhm.
I always would talk to the child and so forth. So it was one of those things. And so a couple of years ago, I actually received a scholarship in the mail
Mhm.
and said I qualified for this scholarship at the university that I had actually taken some classes when I became the center director at that pregnancy center.
Mhm.
And they actually had a class for people who would be counseling girls who are looking for abortions, or unexpected pregnancies.
Mhm.
So I'd already been through several of their classes. And then here, years later, they contact me and said, "Hey, your name's been chosen and you've been qualified for this scholarship."
Wow.
And they were offering this scholarship on life coaching 101 and 201. And I thought, huh, okay, it's not really going to cost me anything. And I seem to be talking to people quite often. So,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to do it. So I did, and I finished those 2 courses, and then I started signing up for other courses, and I took one on marriage and issues in the marriage, and then I took another one that was a three-parter on grief and loss, and I just kept taking classes, and I've taken 2 already on mental health issues, and I'm working on the 3rd one right now, along with other things,
Mhm.
classes. And so I actually was able to apply for my degree, so to speak. And so I am now considered a certified master life coach. So basically, it's like I got my master's certification. So
That's
I've
awesome.
gone all through it. Now I've been counseling others, and I've had several women. The church has been through the church right now. And
Mhm.
one of our women pastors there, she was also the main counselor for the women in the church. And so once we got to know each other really well and all, she started referring women who came to her that had lost a loved one,
Mhm.
she started referring them to me. So I was like, okay. So I started doing counseling at the church, but it was a volunteer position, which
Mhm.
fine because I wanted to help these ladies.
Right.
So I've been meeting with some of them a couple of years now, and I can really see how they have grown and how they've
Mhm.
changed. It's like, yes, this is what we need
Yes.
because so often within weeks of the funeral and so forth, it's like life just goes on for everyone else.
Yes, it
And they
does.
think you're fine too now. It's over, it's done, she's buried, get on with your life,
Yes.
And
And
it's like,
in my grieving class, they said that it can take 10 years to actually fully process the loss of a child minimum.
yes, yes,
And then grief storms are huge because something triggers, like it just reminds you, and then you have this like overwhelming emotion, and they're called grief storms. And
mhm,
you can have them at any time. It doesn't matter if it's in the beginning and the end, or like 20 years down the road, you can still have them. It's very, yes, people do think that, okay, the funeral happened, you're fine now. But their life goes on and they don't realize it. It gets very, very quiet after the
yes,
funeral.
yes. Because, at the time our daughter was still living with us. So she
Mhm.
would have dinner with us each night. She had her 2 service dogs, so we always had the dogs around, and, now the house was empty,
Mhm.
you know? The one dog that survived, the golden, her boyfriend took her, and
Okay.
when she finally did come back home to us, she was happy to be there, but yet you could also tell she was depressed. And you would find her sometimes laying at the top of the stairs because my daughter was in the downstairs apartment. And she would just lay at the top of the stairs and look down and just lay there with her head down and just
Oh,
staring. And she knew the other dog wasn't there, and she knew my daughter wasn't there. And she
right.
was just seemed very depressed, and she wouldn't even go downstairs. It's like she couldn't even go down. She
Wow.
knew it was different. So one night we invited him over and we asked him, would you be willing to take her? Because she was so excited when she saw him. And she spent a lot of time at his house too, because, Rebecca would hang out there.
Right.
And so he said yes, he would be happy to. And he's kept her all these years. And I do have to say, about 4 months ago, we lost her, passed away. It was her time.
Yeah.
So,
Golden
but
retrievers don't live very long,
yeah,
unfortunately.
right. She was about 13 when she died. So, yeah. So that was very hard though for
Yes.
me because that that was the last piece of her,
Right.
and when we were living in Wyoming at the time, we would go see her periodically. And she
Mhm.
was always so happy to see us. And she would just lay right by my feet with her head either on my knees or down on my feet.
Oh.
And she was, she loved seeing us. But then when we say, okay, it's time for us to go, she'd look back and forth at us and at him and like,
Where am I going?
what should we do? And she kind of like, but then she kind of walked more like towards him, like, I love them, but I don't want to go. I
Yep.
don't wanna So, yeah,
That's
and I think she
awesome.
was always happy then when we left and didn't tell her to come, you
Right.
know? So,
I
but she
love
was
you,
always
but
happy to see us too. Yes.
yeah, I can only imagine that would be hard because, like you said, it's that she was the last piece of your daughter, someone that she helped raise, and then I can understand. And then just the puppy itself, animals are just they really grab us in our heart as well. So
Yes, they do.
yes,
Yeah, we've
yes,
always had a dog.
yeah, yeah.
So,
I understand.
yeah, so anyhow, that's, kind of where we're at. I'm now counseling other women,
Hmm.
which has helped me a lot too, because now I'm learning more about grief and all the different ways of grieving there are. And it's not like, they'll say, oh, there's 5 steps to grief,
Right.
First you go here, then you go here, then you go here. And it's like, no, that's
Yeah.
not quite how it works.
Yeah,
You
it's
might,
like all over the board. It's like zigzag. Like you could be angry one moment and it's really super sad the next moment, and then you go back to anger, and then you go, yeah. So I get that. I see that.
yes. Yep. So it was, yeah, I mean, because I've had my time where I was really angry, you know. The night we had to make the decision, I was
Yes.
angry. And then even days afterwards, months afterwards, few years afterwards, I'd still like,
Yeah,
Lord,
and
why
the
did you
thing
have
is you don't know, you don't even know exactly what happened. You know that she was driving one direction and somehow she crossed the median into the other lane and hit head on with the semi, but you don't know what caused her to go over.
No, the police, highway patrol, all of them, they were not able to figure it out. They believe what happened that was somebody probably cut her off
That's what I was
and
thinking
she
too.
lost control
And then so
just
that
based on
somewhere there's someone
their
with a
law.
hit and run, basically, or a cut off and run.
Yes, and I suspect someone because I doubt they will see this. I don't know, but someone in church had called me
Mhm.
and was saying her husband was talking to a bunch of men at his work and they were all talking about it because it was all over Facebook in our little town. We were in just a small town. And apparently, one of the men spoke up and said, "Yeah, yeah, that was a bad accident. Yeah." And somebody asked him, "Oh, well, did you see it?" "Yeah, yeah, I was there," or whatever. And so I said to this woman, I said, "Well, could you please tell him to call or go see the police? They're looking for people who saw anything,
Mhm.
observed anything, whatever. Would you please ask your husband to speak to him?"
Yeah.
Well, then she calls back later and she goes, "No, he just wants to stay out of no, he doesn't have anything to report." He said he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't
Wow.
want to talk to the police. So then I get thinking, why not?
Right.
I know he drives, from what I understand, he drives a truck. Did he cut her off?
Right.
He was zooming past her and he moved over too soon and, cut her off. And she then went over to the side of the road and then came back and then just was losing control.
So
And
sad
next
that
thing you know,
nobody even stopped.
yeah. I mean,
Did
because
the
this is a,
lady did the lady that found the puppies, did she see anything?
she came up to it after it
Okay.
already happened.
It's so
Because
sad that
all,
nobody stopped to say,
yeah,
"This is what happened." That's
yes.
the one thing I love about my husband is, like, he will stop and help anybody. If he sees someone on the side of the road, he'll check to make sure they're okay. There was one time there was a highway in our state and it was caught on fire, and he stopped on the side of the road and took a fire extinguisher and went over and pulled it out. And
Mm,
if there was someone, just the other day we were in Walmart and some gentleman, he must have been late 80s, early 90s, and he thinks he had a stroke, my husband, and he went over there to check to make sure he was okay and that someone needed to call a medic. And, that's just the kind of person that he is. And for somebody not to come forward, that's heartbreaking.
yeah.
With Mallory's accident, there was cameras because it was in the Home Depot parking lot. So we saw what happened. And yeah, very, very, very tragic. He was just a little impatient about getting into Home Depot parking lot before the next car came, and he didn't see her on the motorcycle and hit her directly on. And
It's
she was
horrible.
only half a mile from home. It's just, and she was yeah. It's just, I think people, I don't know what it is about that, but so many people that happens to. I don't understand. Yeah.
Yes,
And you
yes.
could tell that, I watched a little of the PG video, not the her, because that was the PG was hard enough, but she was as far over as she could go. There was a curb there, and so she couldn't. And then he hit her. She went into the parking lot, and you know, you could even see that there were people that ran to her. So she wasn't alone. When it happened. So
Yeah. Well, after it happened, apparently a lot of people then stopped
right.
because from what we understand, there was a gentleman who apparently was an FBI agent or something, and they said he helped pull her out of the car and was doing CPR on her right away.
Have you met him?
No, no idea, even his name, nothing.
Well,
No.
if you're watching this, she would love to talk to you.
Yes, yes, we would.
Yeah.
Anybody who was at that accident.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because it's like, yes, you're right. We're talking a highway.
Hmm.
Vehicles are going 70 plus miles an hour.
Right.
In Wyoming, the speed limit is like 75, I mean. And
Hmm.
in parts of the I-80, it's even 80.
Okay.
People are going 85, 90. So they're moving. And this is a highway.
Right. I know that highway. We took that I took our RV on the way home. We took I-80. I didn't realize it was I-80. We
Yeah,
went through
I-80.
Wyoming.
Well, then you went right through our town and right past where the accident was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because that
it
was
wasn't
we went on that highway in 2021, so yeah, it would have already happened.
yeah. Do you recall going through the tunnels to Green River?
It's no, I remember very steep mountains.
Yes. Well, our area was flat. When you got
Okay.
closer to Utah, yes, it got steep.
Yes. Yeah, I can't even remember where we stayed in Wyoming. I think we stayed at a truck stop in Wyoming. I
Okay.
remember. I'll have to look. I'll have to ask Jimmy. But now that if there's anybody watching who is grieving somebody, either recent or just is having a hard time processing their grief, what are some things that they can do to just kind of help them move them to take that next step?
Right. Good question. One thing I did, and I highly recommend doing, is I took some pictures of her that we came up upon, and I reprinted them, made them really nice, and some bigger, and so forth, and framed them, put them in frames. So we have a little wall,
Hmm.
and the one right now, the house we're in now, is actually kind of in the dining room
Okay.
area because our dining room also has then like off of it a sitting room type
Hmm.
thing. So on the wall in there, so we have a large picture of her in the middle
Hmm.
and then some smaller pictures around of different ages and so
Uh,
forth.
yeah.
And then she wrote poems and they were even published a few times. So
Cool.
we have framed her a few of her poems, and we have those hanging up. And she has her certification or her degree. I mean, from she became a veterinarian technician, and
Hmm.
so we have her degree hanging on the wall.
That's kind of your memorial for her.
That's our memorial. So it's
Yeah.
not like it's right out in the living room, where everybody
Right.
has to look at it all the time. It's there,
Yeah.
and it's like when we walk by it, it's like, "Oh, sweet girl, throw her a kiss," you
Yeah.
know. God, tell
Exactly.
her we said hello, please, because I
Yes.
know she's worshiping right in front of you. So
Right.
so that to me that helped us. Another thing one somebody did was during while she was in the hospital, they made up a quilt, and everybody that was on that Facebook page, there was, like I said, around 400 people, they all wrote little notes on a piece of cloth, square piece of cloth, and then they sent it to this woman, and this woman made a quilt, and it is so beautiful to have that quilt still.
Yes.
We have it displayed, and just to see, sometimes reread all the comments and so forth. That's just so special.
Yes.
I also saved a couple of things. Another thing, and I really want to put this out there because I just recently heard from somebody that everybody's at her to now get rid of her husband's stuff. Oh,
Mm.
you need to clean out the closets, get rid of it all. And oh, you'll feel so much better not having all those remembrance. And it's like, I told her, no, 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 no. Because she even said, I don't know that I'm ready to do that. And I
Mhm.
said, don't do it.
Yeah,
I
don't
said,
listen to other people. Do what your heart it
no,
feels.
exactly. And I know they meant very, very well. But when my kids came up to Wyoming for the funeral, I woke up one morning hearing them all talking and all downstairs, and I went down and here they had already started cleaning out her room. And I guess they took all the clothes. One of the husbands took the clothes to like a Goodwill, and they were going through all her DVDs and VHFs and all that kind of stuff and CDs and so forth. And I was kind of shocked. And it's like, I wasn't ready for that, you
Right.
know? I wanted to take my time going through her things. I wanted to see if there was anything in particular I wanted to hold on to as a remembrance.
Right.
So, I mean, I wasn't mad at my kids. And so I'm sure they're going to be watching this. Please know, guys, I'm not mad at you. It's okay. And I appreciated that you were trying to help us. You thought
Right.
you were doing a really good thing, and I thank you. But yeah, it's like, don't please don't rush people to get rid of the things of their loved ones. That
Yes.
let them do it in their timing. I mean, they'll know when it's time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really super hard. I know just with my mom, there was one thing that she really, really wanted to keep. And she was moving because she just couldn't be in the house anymore because all the creaks, she was thinking he was coming around the corner and she just couldn't. It was driving her mad, she felt like, So she needed to move for her sanity. And that she told the movers, do not touch his slippers because inside the slippers are the imprints of his toes.
Yes.
And so that to her was he was real, you
Yes.
know. That's life showing right there. And they touched the slippers and I got a call and she was freaking out and I went up to her house because she only lived like 15 minutes away at the time and I went through every box looking for the slippers, found them, so that
Yay.
it just helped her to have them. So I understand about the certain things that
Mhm.
mean a lot.
Yeah, so things like that, little mementos, whatever it might be. You
Yeah.
need to keep some things. You need to remember them because they're always going to live in your heart
Right.
and the memories will always be there. Um, and talk to people about them. Talk
Hmm.
to people about your loved one.
Yes.
I talk about Rebecca all the time. And, I'll bring out how, she saved lives because
Hmm.
of her training diabetic alert dogs,
Right.
because the
Yes.
dog saved lives. And years later, she even heard a story. Someone contacted her and say, "Hey, I don't know that you'll remember me, but we had one of your dogs. We adopted one of your dogs, your puppies." And she goes, we're not diabetic or anything. So we didn't, you didn't train her to be a diabetic, alert
Mm.
person. She says, however, she said, we had guests over and she kept going to the woman who was visiting us and she just kept sitting right in front of her and kept staring at her.
Mm.
And after a while we call her away and, so forth. And then she'd turn around and she'd go right back over again. And she'd just stare at her. And, and the woman was going, what does she want? What do you think she needs? And she goes, I don't know. And so then a little bit later, the woman goes, I'm not feeling real good. I think I probably need to go check my insulin levels.
Mm.
And then the woman looked up at her and she goes, are you diabetic? And she goes, yeah, I am. She goes, that's it. My dog is alerting to you. She
Mhm.
was raised in a home where they trained other puppies to be diabetic alert dogs.
Wow.
Dog who was not trained but watched because all
Uh-huh.
the other puppies could see what she was doing with these few puppies.
Uh,
You know, she picked up on it.
that's awesome.
Years later, even
Mhm.
he knew something's not right with this woman. Something
Mhm.
smells wrong.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, so I mean, she saved lives.
Yeah, she did. And that's truly amazing. And like you said, you didn't, there's over 400 people on this Facebook page and you didn't, and they're all over the world and you had no clue that she knew this many people.
No idea. No
Yeah.
idea. And the other thing is she never met any of them personally.
Mhm.
Even her very best friend, she never even met her. And
Wow.
they talked on the phone all the time.
Mhm.
I would wake up sometimes at 2 in the morning hearing her laughing away downstairs
Mhm.
because she was talking to her friend who lives in Mississippi.
Wow,
And
that's awesome.
my goodness, that's so cool. That's
Yeah.
just, I love it.
Yeah. So So, it's okay to keep their clothes and their momentums. It's okay to take time, make a memorial for them because that's what we did. It's a garden. We call it Mallory's Garden. And
Love that.
yeah, and so we just added some flower baskets this past weekend. So it's really beautiful right now. And every year we just add more and more and more to it. And there's a big rock in there that, I mean, it's huge. And a 16-ton piece of machinery that my mind's blanking on and at the moment couldn't even pick it up. We only could roll it. And backhoe, I think. Anyways, so that's something that we do that's special for her, just to remember her. And,
Mhm.
and then we keep, voicemails and photos and text messages and those kinds of things too.
Right. Yep. Yep. Yeah, she had a Facebook page, business page, and we've kept that. And,
Hmm.
we can go back and read some of her comments and stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is
It's one of the hardest things that you can ever deal with in life, but through God and the strength of God, you can take that next step. And,
Mhm.
my husband had a choice. He could have been angry and taken the road of revenge if he wanted to because of this gentleman that hit her. And then, or he could take the way of God and forgive. And as much as hard as it is to forgive, he has forgiven him. And,
Mhm.
I'm sure that gentleman is struggling because he took a young
Yeah.
life. She was 22 years old. And
Yep.
so, he's struggling, but, Jim did find his phone number and said, I forgive you. He never responded back, but at least he knows, Jim has forgiven him.
Right.
And
Right.
but that's the biggest thing that you can do, especially when it's at the hands of somebody else,
Mhm.
is forgive that person. And you don't know exactly who it is, but a
No.
blanket forgiveness, and just
Yes.
know that God is right there with you. He's weeping. He wept for Lazarus because his friends were crying,
Well,
even
that's
though
it.
he knew that he was going to raise Lazarus, but
Exactly.
his friends were in pain, so he cried with them,
Yeah.
and God is
And
crying.
he suffered. Christ suffered so much in this life. I mean,
Did.
he was ridiculed. He was beaten at times. He was, hungry. From what I understand, Nazareth wasn't like a Hollywood or a richy place.
Right.
It's kind of more where the more poor people lived.
Hmm.
And so just growing up, the Bible doesn't talk about his life,
Right.
Jesus' life as a child. But he was different. He was a lot different than
Yeah,
other
there's
kids.
only two instances. We know he was a son of a carpenter, and then that time where he was at the church and Mary and
Yes,
Joseph lost him. It's about all
yes,
we know.
exactly, exactly. So he did things like that, and to have siblings, who didn't understand him.
Yeah.
It's like, why is he never in trouble?
Hmm.
Why does he never get spanked or
Hmm.
whatever,
Right.
whatever it is? And who knows even what little miracles he might have done as a child. He sees a bird fall out of a tree, a newborn or something. He saved it.
Yeah.
And
Maybe.
people saw that, and it's like,
Yeah.
what's with this kid?
He's weird.
Yeah, So it's like that makes. I often think about things like that. It's like, what was his childhood really like? How hard was it or how wonderful was it? And he may have been teased and bullied and so forth because they didn't understand. They
Right.
didn't know
Well, he teased and bullied throughout his adult life, at least, So I'm probably assuming it's not any different.
exactly. And then just what he went through, for the crucifixion. I mean,
I
the
mean, even
beating.
his own town rejected him and they asked him
Yeah.
to leave. So they
Yeah.
didn't have a high respect for him,
No, no. Mm-mm.
which is sad. But yeah, so if there's anybody out there that is currently grieving and you want somebody to talk to, please reach out to Louise. She can help. She's been there, and she's with Right Life Coaching, and we'll put the link to our website in the description. And I just pray that you're not going to find the answers as to why. You're just going to have to accept God's sovereignty. His ways are not our ways, his thoughts are not our thoughts, and know that he has a purpose in the pain. And so, as hard as it is to take that next step, just reach out to Jesus. But if you want to talk to someone one on one, to someone who has been there, please reach out to Louise. She would be love to talk to you and just help you through the next step process because it's not
Yes.
easy. We both know.
No, it's still.
I really appreciate you so much, Louise, and I'm really glad God brought us together.
Yes,
And
me too.
yeah. And so thank you for having and coming on the show and sharing your story and then just talking about how you personally went through it. I know that there are many times where Jimmy sits on the bench he created just days after her death, and he just sits there and he talks to her. And, that's
Yes.
really comforting to him. And,
Hmm. Yeah.
and I know God has purpose in the pain, and it has something to do with a loss and grief retreat type of place where people can come and experience God's peace in the mountains. But we don't have the full details of that, and but it'll come when God's ready. It'll come. It's not his
Yes.
timing yet.
I'll be one of the first there.
Okay, awesome. I would love that. You can come anytime. You don't have to wait until that.
Okay.
We have an RV you can stay in. Okay.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, and we will keep in touch.
All right. Good. Thank you.